UFC 248 goes down this weekend and the co-main event is so good. Name me a better co-main event than this. I will wait. Joanna Champion looking to grab that gold that she held for so very long from the current champion, Zhang Weili. Zhang Weili, the very first Chinese UFC champion. Joanna Champion, the very first Polish UFC champion. Two trailblazers and two flag bearers from their respective countries. Now, this is a massive fight for Zhang Weili. She has only had 4 UFC fights, hasn't lost in 6 years. It is an extraordinary rise. And if she defends against JJ, then that is a huge statement and accomplishment. Now, when I've been trawling through the various media stories, listening to fans, a lot of people are ruling out JJ in this competition. And I think you've got to consider who has beaten Jędrzejczyk before. Rose Namajunas. Very different style to Zhang Weili. Long, tricky submission game, interesting angles. The power maybe not exactly the same way. So different. Valentina Shevchenko. Crudely similar, but the resumes are very, very different. No disrespect to Zhang Weili, but you cannot put on paper those two names side by side yet. Yet Shevchenko just has the most glistening curriculum vitae right now. Zhang Weili, as I said, 4 fights in, she's only really just getting started. So there are naturally some questions over Zhang, and the obvious one is, what is she like over 5 rounds? She looks fit. She looks strong. She's prepared for it once before, didn't need it. What was it, 42 seconds to defeat Jessica Andrade? My goodness. And I'm not saying that was a bad thing to do, but it still now begs the question, what is she like over 25 minutes? We know what Joanna's like. She is a marathon runner, no doubt. I like Jędrzejczyk over 5 rounds more than what I do over 3. She's super tough as well, so she is proven over the 5 rounds. So for me, there is just a little question about Zhang right now. But something that I think that the champion does have that's very interesting and advantageous is her slightly different approach, because her roots in martial arts are proudly with the Chinese arts, like Sanda and the Chinese wrestling, which I'm not going to try and pronounce again because I keep getting it wrong. There are nuances to this, different setups, different angles, combinations, the muscle memory, the patterns will be slightly different. And I'm not sure whether everyone in that strawweight division, apart from maybe Yan Xiaonan, are used to seeing those differences on a regular basis. So it might take a little bit of getting used to when you get in the octagon with someone like Zhang Weili, that there are these slight differences in her approach. Now, I want to put up the numbers for this one, and actually I'm going to show you the UFC stats page in order to do this justice, because they are very, very similar, particularly with the striking, which is where a lot of people, I think, believe this one will play out. So, striking output, pretty much the same. Striking accuracy, pretty much the same. Strikes absorbed, it's close. Zhang is a little better. The grappling is different. Zhang tries the takedown more often. She has 2 sub-attempts to JJ's 1, and she has a 100% takedown defense, but that is in the face of 13 attempts. Joanna has had to deal with 122 attempts and still manages an 81% takedown defense percentage. So you've got to keep in mind that the 4 fights of Zhang Weili and the 13 of Joanna, the former champ's numbers, so solid given the appearances that she's had inside the octagon. Now let's talk about the former champion for a minute, because I think that some people overlook and forget things a bit too quickly. I've been in camp with Joanna Jędrzejczyk back when she was training out of Poland, before she became the glorious champion that she was. And I'm telling you now, she was the hardest worker in the room. I've seen her train for main events injured, and she never moaned. Now she has her personal affairs in order. You can go and do your own digging around that one. She's got her nutrition dialed in as well, which again speaks to how big she is at the weight, because it needs to be pretty much spot on for her to, one, make the scales effectively, but also perform well. That has now been sorted out. So a lot of these little wrinkles are now ironed out, which will allow us to see the very best of her. But I think something that we sometimes overlook is the sacrifice. Now, Joanna's she's a family person. She has left everything in Poland behind. Her home, her family, her friends, everything to pursue the dream of becoming the UFC champion, which she achieved. But then she lost the belt. And she wants to become Joanna Champion once again. That is a big motivating factor for her. But let's turn it onto the other side, because Zhang Weili is pretty motivated as well. She is fighting for something greater than just UFC gold. She's fighting for, in her words, the downtrodden. She's fighting to scratch the misconception about Asian women being weak physically. She wants to bring Chinese martial arts to the world's greatest stage and display it as one of the strongest, to show that it can also achieve greatness like some of the other disciplines that we know and have proved to have been great inside the octagon over the years. That is powerful in itself. Now, another thing that we've got to consider is the preparation for this particular fight. And let's be honest, it has been far from ideal for Zhang Weili. Started her preparation with her team back in Beijing, China. Great. Then was forced to move to Thailand due to this horrible coronavirus thing that's going around the world. And from there, she then had to move to the UAE, to Dubai or one of the Emirates. So she was training there. And then from there, she moved to Vegas. So there's pretty decent leaps in time zones. It's been over an extended period, yes, but that is not ideal for the biggest, which is now the biggest fight that's in front of her, the biggest of her career. She's defending, trying to make the very first defense of her belt. So there's a lot of mental fortitude that needs to come good here, because she's having to make the best of a bad situation, but she'll never want to give herself excuses, I'm assuming. So that's not ideal. Will it affect things? Who knows? We will find out. Whether their team even admit to that, we'll never know. But Joanna has had all of her ducks aligned back in Miami with her usual coaches. She now knows who the best people are to get her ready for her fight. She's been quite vocal about the choices she's made with Team Joanna, more in terms of her nutrition, etc., and perhaps management. But otherwise, she's well in with the American top team family. So what I'm trying to get at is things are solid for Joanna coming into this one, as far as we know. So with all the ancillary stuff, we have two highly motivated, elite level athletes going head to head for championship honours. Co-main events really don't get much better than this one. I'm very much looking forward to it. Thanks for watching this, and as always, enjoy the fights.